In this lecture, we're going to be thinking about basically the epistemology of Stalnaker's theory of assertion. So we introduced Stalnaker's theory of assertion a few weeks ago, and we're going to be specifically thinking about the connection between it and what's called the KK principle. And that principle says that when you know something, you know that you know it. This might seem like a surprising combination of topics. It might not seem immediately obvious when you think about those two things, that there should be any relationship between them. But by the time you get to the end of the lecture, I think you'll see that there is actually quite an important connection indeed. A lot of this video is going to be spent thinking about a particular argument against the KK principle, and then tracing its ramifications out into the theory of assertion. Before we do that, though, I want to spend a little bit more time on the KK principle, why people have found it interesting, and connecting it to the possible worlds theory of knowledge that we saw at the very beginning. Because doing that will help you understand better some of the ways that Hawthorne and Magador describe what they're doing in the paper. After we do that, I'll focus on Williamson's argument against the KK principle that we saw in the extract from Knowledge and Its Limits. This argument relies on what's called the margin for error principle, and shows that the margin for error principle is in tension with the KK principle in cases where your knowledge is inexact. Once I've done both of those two things, we'll then move on to Stalnaker's theory. I'll first show that when KK fails, or when principles like it fail, you get this interesting phenomenon where the common ground fails to settle what is in fact in the common ground. It's not common ground what the common ground actually is. When we understand what that is and why that happens, we can then see that this raises a problem for Stalnaker's use of diagonalization. Stalnaker's use of diagonalization was meant to fix problem cases where it intuitively looks like we don't know what proposition to add to the common ground. What we'll see is that that problem still arises, even when we have diagonalization, in cases where the common ground doesn't itself settle what's in the common ground.